Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to part 4 of How Not to Plan 2025. In this one, we're going to talk about what it means to mistake our temporary experiences as infinite truths. So what does this look like? Simply put, we can tell that we're freezing temporary experiences as infinite truths when we create limitations on what we can achieve. Usually these limitations come from a place of resignation. For example, I can never make X amount of money because I'm just not smart enough. I'm just not talented enough. I'm not likable enough, or I don't come from enough money generationally, right? Or maybe in the realm of relationships, we can say things like, here goes another failed relationship. I guess I'm just meant to be alone. I guess I'm just doomed in that area of relationship. So if you're hearing yourself setting goals, or more often, not setting goals from a space of, well, that's just the way it goes, right? In other words, there's this energy of resignation, or maybe from a space of extremes, for example, using words like always and never, then you may want to pause and question whether you're creating from a stuck, frozen version of reality based on your previous experiences, right? In my own planning, I've noticed that it's so much harder to make space for endeavors that are important for me, but ones where I don't know if I'll get the kind of response I want ahead of time. Here's an eternal example. This is always true for me, right? When it comes to making music, I know that I am the kind of musician, I am the kind of songwriter that always wants to create from a deep space of truth. I can only really create from a space of touching in with what feels true to my experience at the moment. And there's a likelihood that when I touch in to that place and then try to create something, first of all, it might take me a long time. And second of all, when I share it with others, there's no guarantee that other people are going to like it, right? I know for a fact that I always feel better when I commit to my music practice, be that writing songs or practicing singing or practicing the piano or producing tracks. And for a long time, I also carry this story that for some reason people don't care about my music, or they don't care enough about my music to pay for it, more accurately. And when I dissected that story a little further, what I noticed was that the story itself was rooted in experiences that I considered to be failures in the past. For example, there was that time where I performed and I felt like nobody was listening, or there was that other time when I released my album and I didn't get the kind of responses that I wanted. And this is one way that we block ourselves from our true desires. I understand desire as this deep, primal energy that stirs from deep within us that wants to find its way out into the external. Desire is that which needs to be directed outwards into a project, into a relationship, into our daily reality. And when I hold on to this belief that the temporary experience of my audience, right, which the ones that I'm carrying in my head due to my negativity bias, maybe that, oh, my audience doesn't really care about this kind of music, right? Or they don't care enough to actually purchase my music or to give me money for it, right? When I hold on to this belief that that's always going to be the case, I'm literally stopping my desire from finding that external expression, right? Or at the very least, I'm stopping it from going all the way to where the desire really wants to take me. And the reason why a lot of us do this one way or another is quite simple, actually. It's for protection and for survival. I think we brace for failures to ensure that we don't feel the sensations that failures can bring up. It's often easier to hold on to old stories rather than to release those stories from our bodies and then to embrace the reality of our current moment. Because when we embrace that reality of who we are in present time, often we're required to transform. We're required to forgive ourselves, to forgive others. We're required to bring illumination into the places where it feels a lot safer for us to just stay the same. In some ways, it's easier to believe that we can stay the same, that other people will stay the same, that reality will stay the same, rather than embracing that we're always changing at any moment, right? Change can be really scary. And at the same time, change can also be super empowering. The other day, I heard Carolyn Mace in one of her audiobooks said something that really struck me, and it felt like she was speaking to such a deep part of human experience. She said, God is in the chaos. God is in the chaos, which I thought was so profound. And it's so thought-provoking. Most of us shy away from the idea of the mess, the chaos, the failure. But reality itself is chaos, right? And the only thing we know for sure is that we can't predict anything ever. And so often this need to kind of freeze or crystallize our temporary past experiences as infinite truths show up in our planning process in a couple different ways. One way that I see this showing up is we calibrate our planning to what we believe other people's responses will be, right? This can be an audience, this can be a family member, this can be people that you hold space for or people that you serve. This can be the people that you work with, right? Or we calibrate our planning to what we believe our experiences will be based on our own past experiences, right? And often the two are kind of interlinked with one another, right? They're deeply entwined. And here's the deal. Past experiences, be that other people's or our own, are always temporary experiences, right? Can you think of a past experience that you had that always repeats itself? Other than the law of nature stuff, right? Like if I drop something, I know if I'm on planet Earth that it will drop to the ground because of gravity, right? I'm not talking about those experiences. I'm talking about, have you ever noticed yourself responding differently to the same stimulus? For example, have you experienced that maybe 10 years ago you were really into a specific singer, but now you can't listen to that album anymore? Or maybe it's the reverse. You heard a singer that you really couldn't stand many, many years ago that now you're just completely obsessed with, right? I'm sure you've experienced that. So why do we hold our past experiences and other people's responses in the past as a barometer or as evidence that that's always going to be the case forever and ever? right? That actually doesn't make a lot of sense because we know that we're always changing. And we also know that other people are always changing and evolving and taking in new experiences and new data and using that to calibrate how they show up in the world. I'm not saying here don't learn from your experiences, right? Our past experiences carry a lot of wisdom. Our past experiences carry a lot of information for us to work with and to play with. But often, when something is stirring within us, when there's a desire that wants to be explored, and we hold ourselves back because of past experiences, we can end up causing all kinds of distortions, right? We cause emotional blockages, we cause physical ailments, we cause ourselves to feel spiritually and creatively unfulfilled. Sometimes we even stop ourselves from being able to, make the kind of income that we know we want to make, right? I'm not saying that you need to come up with crazy goals that seem fantastical, right? Like if you made, a certain amount of money and then your goal is to, make 10 times that amount, this year, that may not happen, right? And I'm not saying you need to kind of swing to the other end of the pendulum and then create some goal that is not realistic, right? What I'm saying is give yourself permission to really sit with what's alive within you and then to allow that to be expressed in some shape or form. It's possible that what's alive, that what you desire, isn't really going to match the final draft. But that's actually not really a problem. Okay, so how can we integrate this awareness that past experiences or other people's experiences are temporary and they're not to be taken as infinite truths into the process of planning the coming year? So if you know or suspect that there is a specific area where things feel kind of sticky to you, where maybe there's an unpleasant past experience, be that internal past experience or coming from other people that you would like to kind of poke at or that is in your space, and you are feeling curious about, I wonder what's on the other side of that. Here's a visualization exercise that I would recommend. So, first, I invite you to imagine a box outside of your space, maybe about 20 to 30 feet away from your space. And then I want you to conjure up the past experiences that you feel are holding you back. Maybe that unpleasant exchange with someone. Maybe it's a memory of a specific time when you failed at something. And I want you to light up this experience, this memory, in your field, in your energy field, or in your imagination. And then I want you to put these experiences in that box. And I want you to drop that box at the nearest ocean. Allow this box to dissolve, and along with it, the energy of this event or the energy of this experience. Let the energy transform into neutral energy. And then check back with your energy field again. Are there any other remnants? If so, continue to transfer this energy into the box and then dissolve it into the nearest ocean. Now, the point here isn't to bypass the experience, right? But to recognize that the past is the past and you can allow the past to be the past. It's okay to leave the past, After all, you've already left it. The version of you in this present moment is not the same as who you were in the past. You've learned what you needed to learn from that past experience, just by the fact that you survived it. I want you to give yourself permission to move on and then to entertain the possibility that perhaps the outcome may be different this time. And from that place of relative clarity, check in with yourself and ask if that experience is no longer grasping on to me or no longer obscuring my ability to see what is truly present, what is alive for me? What matters to me in this moment? And then I want you to take the smallest step towards that. It doesn't have to be extreme again, right? It can just be whatever feels right to you in this moment. One of the beauties of planning for the year ahead is that you get to start with a clean slate. And if you, like me, have objections rising in the form of, but I can't possibly do that, you know, consider this possibility, right? Consider this fact. The Gregorian calendar is a made-up invention. Starting the year on January 1st is an arbitrary collective agreement. In other words, it's a myth that we've all decided to turn into a fact. Maybe not all of us, but most of us, right? And so you get to ride on that wave of essentially magical thinking too. If there's a project that you've been wanting to do, but maybe you're a little bit afraid because in the past you failed, then what if you give yourself permission to consider the possibility that you're now a completely different person? You're in a completely new chapter. The world has changed, and there's a high likelihood that given who you are now, given who the world is now, there may be possibilities for a completely different outcome, right? And what if also you give yourself permission to turn a new leaf, and to turn a new chapter in your journey? Sometimes what we need is to check back in with who we are now and really let ourselves sit with that, revel with that, and then see how our desires want to take us. Something that I have been surprised by in considering my desire to produce more music in 2025 is I did this exercise where I listed down the steps that are required to produce music. And I was surprised because the steps that I came up with from the perspective of who Jonathan is in 2025 was completely different than when I used to produce music a lot around 2016 to 2019. And that really blew my mind because back in the days, I used to be very much kind of like a top-down kind of person. Like I want to write the song first, and then I have an idea of what the song needs to sound like, and then I'll start producing it, And I realized now when I listed out the steps, what I actually want to do now is I want to create from the bottom up. I want to create small fragments and then start to allow those smaller fragments to be woven into a bigger tapestry, right? This is a very different way of composing. This is a very different way of producing music than what I was used to before. And even just in allowing myself to see the gap between who I was to who I am now, that already shifted my relationship to making music. So I want you to try this. If there's something that you're afraid of, I want you to try listing out what would it take for you to get from this point of being scared to actually completing, doing the thing, right? Maybe not achieving the level of outcome that you want just yet, but what would it take for you to get from this point to that point, right? And then to see the steps. And when you see it laid out in front of you, I promise you that you will experience a level of clarity that wasn't accessible to you before. All right, I hope this helps. Stay tuned for the next installment of the mini series, which is going to be the last one. All right, take care.